Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks.
Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try to make your world a little weirder. I'm Niall.
And I'm Kyle. And, we've been back here recording in the same room together for a little while now.
Mhm.
It's been great. I love it. And I gotta say, I love seeing you sort of count off the different qualifiers.
Look, there's a like hand motion, like
Sure.
hand, like little like hand talking things that you talk with your hands just a little bit.
I'm being earnest
Yeah.
here. I legitimately thought it was very, very funny and endearing because Niall's like, yeah, we're trying to. What are we trying? So what the intro? What are we trying to do again with this? What's the goal with this podcast? And yeah, it just made me laugh. So
Yeah, it's good.
we're I'm just gonna say it again. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm excited because I just got done beating my head into the wall over Alex Jones. If you've
Yeah.
listened to the past couple episodes, and now Niall is back in the fucking hot seat.
I'm back in the hot seat.
So I'm excited to pass that over to you.
I'm stressed.
Sure.
I've got look.
That's a really important thing to note about this podcast is that when we are the ones delivering the information to the fool, the idiot, the dumbass, the asshole, whatever you want to call that role.
Yeah.
You're just so fucking stressed out.
I'm vibrating the entire time. No, I look, I will say we've done enough of these podcasts that I don't feel super worried about it most of the time going into it. It's if nothing else, I've been able to relax a little bit more doing this after 5 years.
Sure. You get like a flow going with how you write notes and research these things, but I legitimately don't think I have been more stressed on this show than when I did Alex Jones. It was anyways.
Well, there you have to make sure that you pay honest tribute to the man. So like it's
right.
it's really kind of a matter of honor in that case. And today, speaking of honor,
oh what?
Look, there's a cryptid that really gets a lot of honor in the cryptid community as maybe like the biggest cryptid.
Is this like a cryptid that like that has been through the military and like
funny that you mentioned the military. That will come up just a little bit later. But what I'm talking about is Bigfoot or the Sasquatch as we know. And this is a topic that is so broad that you have to kind of segment it out a little bit because it's like the most commonly seen cryptid. It's one of the more common like things that you can find out in nature. It's as common as any cryptid can be. So what I want to do is I've got kind of I started looking into a thing called the Yucca Man, which is a specific series of sightings of like a certain Bigfoot in the 70s.
Okay, is this in the Yucca Flats or related to the Yucca plant?
Yucca near the Yucca. I think near the Yucca Flats. It's near. It does. Its namesake does come from part of where it's from. It's most seen near like Joshua Tree, 29 Palms, like Southern California.
Okay, all very cool names. I would just like to point out, just like cool places to be. Like Joshua Tree sounds like a fantasy person, sort of like a pilgrimage a warrior or a paladin would take.
It doesn't sound like a U2 album to you?
Look, I was going to ignore the elephant in the room with that name, but yes, it does also sound like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's sometimes you can't ignore the elephant because its tail's just slapping you in the face.
That's right. You hear the distant echoes of Vertigo. I don't know if that was on Joshua Tree.
No. That was like 15 years after. Joshua Tree was like a somewhat early one.
That's the only U2
Yeah,
song I know,
that's
so
fine.
that's my point of reference, or at least that I remember. So, yeah, forgive my foolish position on
Well,
Joshua Tree now.
Octung baby, it's time to get started. So
Yeah.
but Yucca Man is a thing that like wouldn't be a full episode in and of itself. So what I got into a bit was kind of the history of Bigfoots in this like southwestern area.
Okay, that's interesting because I feel like I'm racking my brain. We've only really done subspecies of Bigfoot, right? Like
Yeah.
we've never we've done the skunk ape. We've done like specific event like the Bigfoot War is one that I think of pretty
Yeah,
often.
that one's pretty great. Up in like that was Canada, right?
I think so. So it's like, but I realized that we've never just like talked about Bigfoot, and I mean, like you said, that's a thing that could cover so much material.
Yeah, it's a pretty wide ranging topic because the kind of ape like humanoid Bigfoot type creature or Sasquatch, whatever you want to call them, it is the most prominent cryptid there is. You know.
Yeah.
So there's a thing that I kept stumbling upon, which is just known as the Mojave Bigfoot. It has a lot of different other names. There's some other names come from different sightings. But the Mojave Bigfoot is basically the name for like these big feet that you find in desert climates and like the southwest of America. So this episode is going to be kind of about the Yucca Man and the Mojave Bigfoot at large.
We're talking about Bigfoot variants. Like
a little bit, yeah.
One of the things that like when it first started showing up in the video games of Pokemon, where it was like you could find regional variants of Pokemon, that was like, I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
So of course we've got to get that into the Bigfoot lore, and I'm gonna love that as well. And I'm curious how much a Mojave Desert Bigfoot looks like a sand shrew.
I will say not much.
Okay.
It looks a little bit more like a Bigfoot.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
There's now there was I think there are some sightings in this one that have like a very light like almost blonde Bigfoot.
Okay.
Which is kind of interesting for a desert climate. But mostly this is your somewhat typical Bigfoots, big feet, whatever the plural of Bigfoot is, in a desert climate somehow. Which to me, okay, this is kind of the underlying question of the entire episode: is does this Bigfoot have some sort of like camel like appendage or something that allows it to like, because you're dealing with a very like covered in hair, massive humanoid creature living in a desert.
Okay, yeah.
That seems challenging to me.
Right, for sure. Well, maybe you know what? I just realized I was about to start saying, well, you know, a camel has humps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they store all their delicious juices that keep them hydrated. And
yeah, if you nip off that top of a camel's hump, you can just stick a straw right in there.
It's like cracking open a coconut or slicing the top off a watermelon. You can just dig right in. But I was thinking, I was about to start like listing off funny places that a Bigfoot could have a hump. But I'm now realizing that we already know what a Bigfoot that is adapted to a desert environment looks like because we have the cone heads.
Oh my God.
You remember?
I forgot about the cone heads.
So I'm assuming that's just sort of a type of Bigfoot that evolved a hump on top of its head so that it could live in the Mojave.
Well, you know, keeping it up there, it's like a water tower. It's, you know, you keep it up out of like the dust and everything, and it's close to the mouth so it can go straight in, you know?
Exactly. And if
it's the most efficient place to put the hump.
Yeah, and you know, but here's the weird part about the situation with the coneheads. One, that I'm mentioning them at all. But two, the thing about them is it's not that it's self-regulatory like in this pouch that they have on their heads, but rather they have to kind of jam straws in each other's heads like sort of a juice pack to get the water that they need.
It's like a big hairy Capri Sun on top of their heads.
Gross. That's a good title for the episode, but gross.
Oh man. No, so yeah, this is something that this went a little off the rails from what I was expecting, but because there's not that's the thing is like I didn't find a lot of people questioning this thing. Mainly, okay, there is a whole thing that I'll get into when we're talking about the history of these things, um, because a lot of the kind of Bigfoot lore, so to speak, in this area comes from like Native American,
Sure.
like their kind of mythological beasts, kind of like that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
A lot of their like hairy devil type um belief systems. So that's kind of one of the things that they really seems to feed into this kind of thing. Uh, so I guess they don't really like there isn't because it's like this a little bit more. I don't know the practicality of a big hairy sweating beast
Yeah.
hanging out in the desert doesn't get covered a whole lot.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that people bring up with the Bigfoot, a lot of the Bigfoot believers will talk. It's kind of similar to like ancient alien theory,
Hmm.
where like we have all these examples throughout history that supposedly could be cultures and places around the world, ancient times, witnessing and recording Bigfoot. Um, and it just, I wonder, because like personally,
Hmm.
I don't believe in Bigfoot. I think but it does make me wonder what in our like culture, what in our minds, like throughout the human experience makes people want to like say that or think that they saw like a big hairy humanoid. Like what is that to us, like socially, culturally, you know?
Yeah, I that's really kind of the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not my big question. I have a very different one that
Very
is
different, yeah.
definitely as serious and prominent as that.
Sure.
But it like the explanation of if these things aren't real, you see for like Mothman, you see the heron, you see
Hmm.
like like a crane, like
Or an
a
owl.
large bird
Yeah,
of
yeah.
some kind, and that makes some sense. Like especially at night when things are dark, you can kind of just see something with a big wingspan. Maybe the moonlight is catching its eyes in a weird way, or whatever is causing the red eyes, and so you can like fear brain can kick in. But a lot of these things with like big feet, eh, what like are they just seeing like a big like ape, a bear?
Are they
Like
seeing a guy?
yeah, is it just some
Is it a
guy?
bear? Yeah, it's a good question. But
It's the
I
cast of Without a Paddle. So
derailed you long enough. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, it's fine. This is one that we can kind of riff on because I like there are a bunch of stories, but the well, we'll set up the Yucca Man has the most interesting quirk of any of the big feet in this area,
Okay.
for me at least. Um, and so the story of the Yucca Man is most notably thought of as starting in 1971.
Hmm.
There, like most of these cryptids, where there's a sightings, you then as you dig in, other sites are just like, oh, but also it was seen in like the 1940s, and like sometimes it kind of goes past the kind of most popularized starting point. But this seems to be, especially for a thing specifically called the Yucca Man, where it begins. So we're going to start here. And um, this is one of the things that makes it, like I said, has this quirk that makes it somewhat interesting in that the people that see the Yucca Man are in a lot of cases Marines.
Okay. Hmm.
So the first sighting of a Yucca Man, or the Yucca Man, was by a Marine guard who was on duty at the base in 29 Palms, which is just in like I believe it's in Southern California. Um, he was discovered while on duty. He was discovered unconscious with his rifle bent in half when they came to like collect him at the end of his shift. He was like freaking out when when he woke up and was brought to. He was freaking out. He was very discombobulated, kind of. They say he's just very panicked. But he reports that he was confronted by a huge man who appeared out of the dark. And as this man started to approach him, he saw that he was extremely hairy all over. Um, he commanded the creature to stop and lifted up his rifle to basically threaten him. And in response, the creature just snatched the rifle from him, bent it in half, and knocked the guard out.
Pretty sure I've seen that shit in a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yeah, it's literally just like bent like there's not a lot of detail to it, but it seems like he just like bends it either like Superman style, where it's just like in his hands or like bends it over his knee, and then just like clocks him one and just knocks out this
Oh my
Marine,
god, that's
which
fucking crazy.
which really kind of brings to mind the combat readiness of the Marines. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, nothing in their combat readiness has them prepared for Sasquatch.
I thought we were supposed to be prepared. Like that's a thing that I think
Nobody expects the random Sasquatch event is the
fair.
thing.
It is
So,
a bit like the Spanish Inquisition. So
yeah.
uh now there are a couple of variants on this story that kind of just change the details slightly. Sometimes the Marine was knocked unconscious by the beast and found hours later. Another version occurs at a rifle range where a watchman who was also armed with a rifle wakes from an assault to find his weapon bent in half. So it's either he's on duty or he's at a rifle range, and sometimes isn't found by people and just kind of goes and reports it, and other times he's found by his cohorts unconscious. Um,
So there isn't like an official report of this. This is just a story that sort of came out about a Marine who.
yeah, there's a couple, like, mainly you get like interview type stories, not
Mhm.
I it you would think with this next thing I'm going to tell you that there might be an official report, and maybe there
Good.
is, but I did not see it.
Okay.
Um, Supposedly, both the FBI and CIA were brought in to investigate the matter. And they found tell of two similar sightings of the same creature that night. Uh, there was supposedly some internal report that I did not find, that the Bigfoot was accompanied by a small similar looking creature in one of the versions of the story, and the main Yucca Man was supposed to be at least 12 feet tall.
Oh Jesus,
Yes.
that's the tallest Bigfoot I've ever heard of.
This is definitely up there. Now, what's weird is that in the different versions of this, like I was reading this across different websites because you kind of have to cross check stuff when you're reading these kinds of stories.
Yeah.
There were certain ones that said it was about 8 feet.
That's that's
yeah.
typically what I hear with Bigfoot.
But a lot of the sites do say 12 feet tall. So this could be the gangliest Bigfoot we've come across so far. Um, and it was also reported that there were dogs in that particular area who barked all night to try to like wake up whoever is watching them. And this was somewhat unusual for these dogs. They're trained to actually be like watchdogs. So it's believed that they were suggesting the presence of something unnatural in the neighborhood.
Okay, and so these dogs make it out of this story unharmed. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I did not find anything about dogs being
Not
harmed.
Keeping with our tradition here. So to kind of fix that, I'm going to go ahead and add to the story that unrelated to the events that transpired that night, those dogs did pass away
But they passed away peacefully.
peacefully.
Yeah, they passed away peacefully.
Unrelated, natural causes, but all the next day,
Immediately. Just,
immediately.
oh, man. So just all immediate dog aneurysm or something, just like just
a mass
entirely
hysteria
gone.
amongst dogs. And I'm just gonna I have to also just put this out here because I feel like I've gone a couple episodes dog death without mentioning that we love dogs.
Oh yeah, no, I
but
love dogs.
it just keeps happening with this show. They keep dying.
Look, sometimes we're not forcing the meme. The meme is forced on us by
true.
conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
So there were a couple other sightings that kind of that came out later. One was in 1979, so 8 years
Okay.
later.
It's a while.
Mm-hmm. A couple was reported that their car journey, that they were just out driving one night, and it was interrupted by a massive hairy man near their condo in the desert hot springs.
Okay.
The creature stepped out from the yucca bush and stood in front of the car. So that's possibly where the name comes from. The chest of the creature was described to be as large as a refrigerator, and it had very long arms that dangled down below its knees.
Okay.
The Yucca Man was described as being covered in long tan hair, and within seconds, it went back into the bushes. It was then once again spotted the same year in Hemet, California, where he left behind actual evidence. There were 17 footprints in total left behind by the Yucca Man. The footprints are 1.5 feet long and 6 feet apart.
Oh, okay.
So either like a very long stride or this fucker was running.
Right. That first encounter makes me laugh just because if you literally play out the events of that as they are described, this Bigfoot steps out of the bush. He stands in front of the car, says, "Take a picture. It'll last longer," and then walks back in. That's
literally it.
That's amazing.
Now, there are other, like, this is the thing that I didn't find a lot of detail about.
Okay.
Supposedly, the Yucca Man there are other, like, sightings at the 29 Palms base where the Yucca Man effectively has been, like, pranking Marines.
Ooh, like whoopee cushions and toilet squirters?
Yeah, more like throwing like rocks and like scaring them and shit. Like, you know,
like a Bigfoot does.
More like YouTube prank than a whoopee cushion prank. You know,
murdered a military man prank. Upload that shit to
YouTube. It's more just like has been kind of spooking and not terrorizing, but like
just like freaking people out.
Yeah, like doing little Bigfoot pranks to the 29 Palms base attendees.
You know, I've never heard of an encounter where somebody has been like killed by or like actually harmed by a Bigfoot. I would fucking love to be like on a walk in the woods and just see a Bigfoot.
Yeah. Now this the story that I just told you, one of the first one I told you, does have the Bigfoot like punching out and knocking a guy unconscious.
I am willing to.
So he might have. Look, Bigfoot might give you a concussion.
Okay, I'm willing to take the concussion if it means I get to witness Bigfoot.
That's fair.
It's just very few stories involve him harming anybody, and usually it's like, I mean, clearly he's a peace guy because he bent his gun in half. He's like, "Fuck you for carrying this shit around. What's this all about?" Just cracks that shit in half and says, "Fuck you," and socks him one. That to me just says he's kind of like a peacenik with an edge.
Yeah, like there's a little bit of prankster blood in him. You know, he likes to spook the Marines, which mainly is also a form of peaceful protest.
Right.
If you really get down to it. So this is like this is Space Brothers without the technology. Yeah. You know, it's just the like action it's the street level action that a Bigfoot can provide. Without the, flying saucers of Space Brother to keep us from over militarizing ourselves.
Right. Bigfoot is all about praxis.
Yeah.
Is the thing that we know about him.
Bigfoot is all about like sugar in the gas tank and and just, stopping. Like you can reread that story earlier of him like stopping in front of the car as like seeing if that's a military vehicle.
True.
And when he realized it was civilian, you just let him pass.
Yeah.
Because look, Bigfoot's not out here to fuck up civilians. He's just here to like do what he can to stop the overreach of the U.S. military. Sure. And frankly, that makes him a king.
Yeah, we appreciate him for that.
So there's another thing that whenever you look up the Yucca Man, you'll probably see another name that seems to be either a linked creature, the same creature, or just another creature in the same area. And that is something known as the cement monster.
Whoa. What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is kind of a smorgasbord of like Southwest like Bigfoots this episode, because I kept just finding these like scattered like shotgun blasts of stories of different things. And none of them are like, you could do a full episode on this one thing, but they're all Bigfoot in the same area. So I thought that it works. So we're going to talk about the cement monster real quick.
Eager to figure out why he's called the cement monster.
This is yet again near 29 Palms. This is a story by a serviceman named Ken Fox. He said, "I used to be stationed at 29 Palms from 86 to 89. I spent a lot of time in the Joshua Tree Monument, but never saw anything of real interest, if you know what I mean. Where I did see something was with my Marine buddy Mike in the March of 1988 after leaving Big Bear Lake. We had been snow skiing all day at Big Bear. Now, as you probably know, the quickest way to get back to 29 Palms is to take the shortcut through the desert. I believe it goes through or very near Apple Valley. It eventually comes in the back way to Yucca Valley after passing through Landers. Yes, now you know the highway, right? Okay, here goes one of the coolest things that I ever saw during the 1980s, which that's saying something.
Yeah.
Mike and I had just left Big Bear. It was about 9 p.m. We were completely down from the mountain and just entering the desert, still kind of going downhill. On the right-hand side of the road, there is a cement factory sort of all by itself. There isn't any civilization around for about 10 miles or so, which isn't uncommon for the Mojave Desert. Mike was driving. I believe I saw it first. From the left side of the road, something very large seemed to stand up on two legs and run across the road. The bottom half looked human, covered with hair, and the top half wasn't very visible, but appeared monsterish, scary in other words. The headlights only got the bottom half, and the damn thing ran out about 150 feet in front of us. It made it across the road in 3 strides. I distinctively remember seeing the arms pumping back and forth just like any of us would do if sprinting across the road in front of a car. It appeared to be 8 feet tall. Now for the interesting part. I didn't say anything. I just kind of glanced over at Mike. He just kind of glanced back at me. Then we both looked right at each other. What the hell was that? I said. That was the cement monster. After him. Mike slammed on the brakes and turned around. I started digging through the glove box looking for his wife's pistol. I said, go down that dirt road, still looking for the pistol. About 300 feet down the dirt road was the old cement factory, but no sign of the thing that ran out in front of us, so we drove around a little bit, didn't see it. We talked about it a few times before our enlistments were over. The strange thing is that we just accepted we had simply seen some sort of prehistoric man, and that was that, and it was no big deal. And maybe someday we might be privileged enough to see another.
Now, if you're in that moment thinking, oh, I saw a prehistoric man, some sort of weird hairy man, why is your first instinct to get a gun to shoot it?
I don't know. That seems to be a lot of people's instinct because I don't know if it's like a fight or flight thing.
You already, okay, I could see that. But here's the thing. You already have the high ground in this situation because a prehistoric cement monster man doesn't have a car. True. You have a car. You can stay in your car and scope out the situation. I think the gun's overkill. That's all I'm saying. But,
oh, no, I fully agree. Especially when we know that these kinds of creatures can just bend your gun in half.
I mean, it's literally like when people are like in stories and they're like, so a giant flying saucer hovered over my house and shot a beam of light that carried my wife off, and my instinct was to just shoot at it. It's like, I mean, good luck, I guess.
Yeah.
But also, in the case of the prehistoric man, you could kill something very important.
Yeah. Now, it seems the cement monster angle, the kind of the name of it seems to come from the fact that it lives in this cement factory, but also some of the reports of it, the top half of it seems to almost be like caked in like a kind of cement mixture or something.
Right.
Like the lower half is like Bigfoot, top half maybe you got like dipped, you know? Like kind of like a dipped cone.
Like, yeah. How do we know this wasn't just some big hairy dude doing concrete angels?
Look, that's very possible if you think that maybe it was just an 8 foot tall, like an 8 foot tall man covered in hair that had been caked in cement.
Sure. This is my mind is sort of assuming here that they were kind of like in the moment, you know, thinking 8 feet, but it was more like a 6 foot something.
What was there was a story that I talked about on here like 2 or 3 years ago. There was something up in the sky, and they actually did like a test. It was in some documentary. They did a test of like people's ability to perceive height without like a sense of scale.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, and it was really interesting because it's just like there are like some people are better at it than others and stuff. Like it's not entirely impossible for you to gauge a pretty rough idea of how big something is from a distance, but without this perception of distance, like it's literally the reason why stuff like the Lord of the Rings movies works. Like forced perspective is a thing. Forced perspective is like a tried and true trick to trick your brain into thinking something is a different size than it is.
Yeah, human perception is just tricky.
Yeah.
And full of faults. And I mean, I remember just a couple weeks ago, I was like looking up UFO footage and stuff, and it was like from an angle, this like there was a thing that looked very much like some sort of freaky ass UFO, and a whole bunch of people were like getting out of their cars and taking videos and photos of it. And then from another angle, it was revealed very clearly to be a blimp.
Yeah.
Which honestly, that you might as well be witnessing a cryptid with a blimp, just because there's like 10 active ones left in the entire like country or something.
And
I don't know.
so if you see it and it's not like immediately above a football stadium,
right,
you're really seeing something special.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
So there are like a couple other like very nondescript accounts of the Yucca Man, both taking place in the 1990s. Basically, just like yet again crossing the road. But one was that I think is really kind of funny is it. You'll see this one talked about as like the time someone got a picture of the Yucca Man,
Okay.
but you cannot find this picture anywhere.
Mm,
And so this is from an anonymous source, but this is a supposed story of someone who actually got a photograph of the Yucca Man. So take this with as much of a grain of salt as you'd like.
yeah.
I thought I would share this. Over Easter break in about 1998 or 1999, I was camping and rock climbing at Joshua Tree with two friends. We stayed in the Hidden Valley campground. At some point during the trip, I took a picture of our campsite, which backed up against large rocks with a famous climb overhead. Between the rocks was a deep crevice, although not a full cave. You guessed it. When the pictures were returned to me, there was a primate-type face peering out of the darkness of the crevice. It wasn't super clear, but distinct enough that everyone I showed to noticed it. I showed it to a friend who used to ranger at Joshua Tree, and she said that might be the Yucca Man, which was the first I had heard of him. I'm not certain where the photo is now, although I'm certain I didn't throw it away.
That is interesting because that sounds so much like the description of an image of Bigfoot that I have seen that's kind of creepy. That is exactly that, of like this crevice with the.
You might have seen the photo. I couldn't. I like this photo seems to be a little lost, but I wouldn't be surprised if either a similar thing has happened or if here's the thing that I've noticed. When you're looking at Bigfoot sightings and Bigfoot stories, if you go from site to site, things get attributed to different versions of Bigfoot, different places, different sighting times. Like sometimes the same story will be linked to like the Mojave Bigfoot, but also the Yucca Man, but also something on like the East Coast, because people just kind of free associate these stories to try to make them like make sense of any of it. And so some of these stories get, especially something from an anonymous source, can get like tweaked and redone all over the place for different types of Bigfoot.
Yeah, the one that I'm thinking of got passed around the internet a lot in the like 2010s ish. I do recall like the early to mid 2010s, and it to try and describe it, it's sort of like there's like foliage in the way, and there's like a crevice of this Bigfoot face like peering out.
Oh, I think I've seen this one.
Yeah, and I'm just curious. I tried to look it up. It's one of the photos that goes around that people say like, oh, this is real. And it definitely is like kind of an older photo that looks like it was taken in like the early 2000s, late 90s. So
yeah,
if a listener out there knows what I'm talking about, please email it to us.
I'll see if I can look for a Joshua Tree photo. I usually don't look too hard for photos when doing research for this podcast because
it's an audio
an audio medium, but I like sometimes they are helpful for context. So I'll see if I can find it. But that's the thing. So I also said something about like the history of Bigfoot in the area. So let's kind of go through a little bit of this to kind of tie this all together, because there are some people that claim the Southwest of America is actually the first place Bigfoot was seen.
Okay.
And they say this because of this story. So in 1769, Spanish priests were warned of the dangers of the hairy devils, in quotes, that live nearby. The Indian tribes in the area basically were afraid of these wild men or hairy devils out in nature, and they refused to go anywhere near where they believed the creatures lived. Someone who studies this, named Bobby Short, says Sasquatches have been reported in remote locations of Southern California since the early 1700s. The Mission Padres wrote about them. So basically, some of the earliest reported like historical sightings of a Bigfoot-like creature come from Spanish priests in the American Southwest. Now, caveat to all of this, this is people basically remarking on things that Native Americans were telling them. So it is like the Spanish priests didn't discover Bigfoot. The Native American tribes have a thing that has then since morphed into Bigfoot in our common practice.
And we didn't have that sort of history until it was given to us by the Native Americans,
yeah.
Right? Okay.
So this is like a lot of what we consider Bigfoot now seems to come from these kind of Native American. Uh, I don't know what to call these kind of. It's like Thunderbirds in a
Myths,
way. It's
maybe,
kind of
or
myths.
folklore.
Folklore is probably a better way to say it because it's like a part of their belief system that is there's a religious aspect to it, a cultural aspect to it,
Mm-hmm.
and like a lot of different aspects that go beyond just like a cryptid or that kind of thing. So I struggled to even call something like a Thunderbird or in this case this version of Bigfoot a quote unquote cryptid because it is part of a belief system,
Right.
not just a an animal. So
Sure.
but so this is where I think, as far as I can tell, a lot of what turned into Bigfoot comes from, which is weird because we normally think of Bigfoot as like a forest creature, as like a mountain creature, when in reality it seems like it maybe comes more from the American Southwest.
Yeah. That I mean, that makes sense. So many like imagine if like we had like it's kind of like it reminds me of oh my god fearsome critters,
Yeah,
like
the lumberjack tales. Yeah,
yeah, where like I think some of that stuff ended up morphing into cryptid, where like eventually over time it went from this folklore thing to there's like some sort of biological like reality to it that like we're trying. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
no,
it,
it's the line between folktale, folklore, and modern like cryptids and like urban legend stuff is all this kind of like miasma of whatever people want to call it at the time. And it's the lines are ever changing. Like literally the if you go on the cryptid wiki, there's which is not an official source by any means, but it is an interesting cultural context point for this, to
mhm.
me at least, because it literally has like n- uh things that turned out like there's sections I forget what they're called, but it's like almost it's effectively no longer cryptid because it was either found out to be part of something else or like a misidentified animal or something. So like things can move into and out of the cryptid category on that wiki depending on the context and the best context we have at the time, which I
Sure.
think is interesting
Yeah,
in terms of like the study of these kinds of animals and seeing what goes where the line is between animal and cryptid.
for sure. It's weird too. Like you think of something like the Jersey Devil,
Mhm.
which I think is a more recent story, or at least the story that like birthed our idea of the Jersey Devil.
Yeah.
Is like what was it, like the lady gives birth to baby Satan, essentially like a goat head baby,
Mhm.
um which that's more like sort of a folk tale sort of thing, but it's immediately brought into this canon of there is some biological entity out there that we have not been able to capture on camera,
Yeah.
called the Jersey Devil, that's like a goat creature.
And do you think that the line almost comes down to sightings?
Maybe it could, yeah, it could be, it could go, that transformation maybe occurs when people start, you hear the story and then people start coming forward to claim they've seen it. And
Mhm.
then once people start claiming to have seen it, it's like there's some concrete reality to be touched because all these sightings come in. I
Yeah.
don't know.
And
And
then
then
it takes
it takes on a new form.
yeah.
So,
The evolving nature of these things from belief to I guess a different kind of belief is interesting.
yeah,
So I Jersey Devil is actually a very good one to talk about for this because it is so much like it comes from this specific folklore story that then gets put into a thing that now people claim to see out in the world.
yeah.
And it has now been like added to the canon of cryptids despite the fact that it started as like a borderline old wives tale.
Yeah, it's funny too because like if something remains as a folk story,
Hmm.
you're never gonna see it on Cryptid Wiki, right? Like
Yeah.
it's never gonna make that leap into, unless people
It
start thinking they've seen it, then it's never gonna make it there.
yeah, it at best goes in the non-cryptid side where it's just like, yeah, this is just
Yeah,
a tale. So yeah, I don't really know where to go with that, but that's a thing that I do think about of like whenever I start looking at a cryptid and I can't find like any sightings or like what I think might be a cryptid and I can't find any sightings and I just find out that it's basically like a version of a uh like a native tribe's belief system or one of their like devils or something like
hmm,
that. You know, devils used very broadly here.
Yeah.
I'm always like, is that really cryptid then? Like, I don't want to just like, I don't know. There's something that feels borderline appropriative about that I don't really want to delve into on this show. So I try to stay wary of it. And like the Thunderbirds are as close as I got. But there are actual like cryptid sightings of those. So it's
Hmm.
interesting. But okay, so back to the Mojave Bigfoot history. The next kind of rash of sightings happens in the 1800s when the Butterfield stagecoach line starts to pass through this area, and they would stop at a place named Dead Man's Hole to rest and water the horses.
Uh,
Yeah, I thought you might get a kick out of that one. This is where they would stop and stretch their legs, rest everybody,
stretch their holes.
stretch that dead man's hole, and quench their thirst in the dead man's hole. So, one of the probably the most famous sighting of this happened in 1876 when one of their passengers got out of their coach and reported that he saw a large, naked, hairy thing watching them from behind some scruff, aka bushes and other undergrowth.
Back when they were naming Dead Man's Hole, they were like, "There's no way however, there's no way somebody's gonna misinterpret this name down the
Yeah,
line.
it's
They're gonna get what it's all about."
exactly. No one will ever take this and think of something dirty about this.
Also, did they say it was a naked man?
Naked hairy man. So basically just unclothed. So
Okay,
you
okay,
could
so not like, oh, he was covered in hair, but also you could see like his entire dick, balls, and ass.
I did not see confirmation of dick balls or ass. I only found the generic large naked hairy thing.
You just said that like dick balls was one thing.
Yeah. Oh, maybe that's a new cryptid. Let's see if we can get dick balls the cryptid trending.
Dick balls.
So there ended up being multiple unsolved murders at Dead Man's Hole, including a French Basque shepherd, several people on the run from the law or creditors, and a wealthy man from San Francisco named William Blair. It was said that many of the victims had bruised and broken necks, and their valuables and money were not taken. These unsolved murders lasted until 1922. And the last one was found 64 years after the first recorded murder was done in the area.
Oh.
And so there are people that think that effectively there's like a Bigfoot murderer in this area because
Okay.
of Bigfoot sightings in this area at this time, and also the people who didn't have anything stolen from them, like all their like anything of value was found with the body. They were just found like beaten to death or like broken neck.
Jesus. Okay, so that kind of throws my whole thing earlier of like I've not heard much about violent Bigfoot into question. But wow, I mean,
Yeah.
this is just a different style of Bigfoot in a similar area.
Look, it was a rougher time.
Yeah.
Maybe the Bigfoot lived in Dead Man's Hole, so it really took umbrage to the stagecoach line using this as a rest stop, because I'm guessing you get a lot of people, pissing and shitting,
Right.
and that's just like, frankly, that's bad manners in someone's house.
Yeah, just letting the piss and shit all over just letting it kind of drop all over the place is kind of
There's something
inappropriate.
fucked up that's the first place my brain went, is like, why would this Bigfoot murder people? Oh, it's probably because
Well, it was
they were
all the
using
piss
this
and
place
shit.
this is the place they were using to like relieve themselves on the journey, so it got mad. People kept like pissing and shitting in its house.
I mean, if you were sitting in your apartment and your window,
Mhm.
somebody could just open your window from outside and you just would have poop just tossed in. I mean, you'd kill somebody too.
Yeah.
So
Bruises. If you poop in my house, you're gonna end up with a bruise. I'll say that.
yeah, there you go.
So, well, not in a toilet. Like if you poop outside of a toilet, you can
Every
use the
time
toilet.
I use the toilet over here. Niall kicks my ass.
Oh man! So there are more sightings. In March of 1878, the San Diego Union reported that a man named Turner Helm claimed to have seen a giant with dark fur like a bear and a human face near Warner's Ranch, which is in the same area as Dead Man's Hole. So in the same kind of area, and this kind of led to a little bit of investigation. Not really much came of it, but one of Helms's prospecting partners reported this. It said he was a man of about medium size and had rather fine features, not at all like those of an Indian, but more like an American or Spaniard.
Mm.
Mr. Helms spoke to the singular creature first in English and then Spanish and then in Indian, but the man remained silent. Mr. Helm called to me, but the wind was blowing so hard I could not hear him. The wild man then turned and went over the hill and was soon out of sight. This
Hmm.
man was supposedly covered in hair 2 to 3 inches long all over his body, with a beard and head hair being very long and thick. They supposedly found barefoot tracks in the area, but had kind of usually linked those up with just the tribes around in this area. So I don't know where this falls in with Bigfoot. Like, this could have been just a very hairy guy. I don't
Right.
know.
Well, yeah. The way they describe it too is as a big, hairy humanoid figure, but having a human face. Normally with Bigfoot, you get that sort of primate
Yeah,
thing going on, which honestly, picturing like a big fucking hairy, just completely covered in fur, and then a human face
hmm
is way scarier.
yeah. I definitely do agree that like the human face does make it worse.
Yes.
So this led to a thing in April of 1878. Now, we found out later, like someone looked into this, and found this was published on April 1st, 1878. So this is like an April Fool's Day joke by a paper at the time, but it's still illustrative of like the amount of kind of newsworthiness that a supposed Bigfoot type creature around this area at the time had. So in this time, a report came out of Julian, which is I guess was a small town at the time, that was published in the San Diego Daily Transcript that claimed a man named Edward Dean and Charles Cox claimed to have shot and killed a Bigfoot at Dead Man's Hole. They described it as a gorilla with the face of an Indian and fangs like a bear.
Whoa.
Its foot was claimed to be 24 inches long. Although they promised to bring the body to San Diego, there is no evidence they did so.
Oh, this is like a joke, right?
Yes, this was
Okay.
so
Sorry.
this story was out there for like a long time, and then as like an actual supposed story, and then 100 years, it's literally, the site says 100 years later, a Daily Transcript reporter named Herbert Lockwood started to investigate the story, and he discovered that it appeared in the paper on April 1st, 1878.
We were doing that all the way back in the 19th century, huh?
Bigfoot prank stories in newspapers in 1878.
Nothing funnier than reporting something dope as fuck and then finding out it was an April Fool's bit.
Now,
Fuck
the
off.
other parts of this I didn't see as part of the story. Like, it was just the like the people shooting and killing a Bigfoot
But
was
the
the,
actual like guy who claims to have witnessed it is like
as
full
far
of
as I
stories.
know, that is an actual
Okay.
report.
Okay.
So it just seems like the reports of it became popular enough and notable enough in the area at the time that they decided to do a funny Bigfoot joke about it
That's pretty
in
funny.
their April Fool's Day prank.
I got a hand to him. Pretty funny.
Pretty funny. What's funnier than shooting and killing a Bigfoot?
I can't think of a single fucking thing.
Yeah. So but yeah, this is just like, I brought this up because I wanted to see. It was interesting to see how how many supposed Bigfoot sightings there were in this area at this time. That it's not like exactly where the Yucca Man was, but this is all kind of in the same region. So especially if if his hair was 3 and 4 inches long at that point, if it's still around, maybe now we have the full on hairy motherfucker we see today.
Yeah, that's true.
Now there's also a place named Anza Borrego State Park that
Ah.
has a creature known as the Borrego Sandman, or also known as the Missing Link.
Okay.
So
I think I've heard of this.
yeah, this is just like more Bigfoot stories. There's another one. Kind of, we're jumping forward in time here a bit at a time. There's also stories from the 1950s of a thing called the Speedway Monster near Mickey Thompson's Fontana Dragway in Fontana, which I believe is in California. The Speedway functioned from 1955 until 1972, when it was closed after a series of fatal crashes. But people at these events would claim to see a wild man, and it was dubbed the Speedway Monster. It was believed to live in the foothills of the nearby San Bernardino Mountains, and it had a habit of crossing the open stretches of land just beyond the dragway's edge during the events. So it seemed to be kind of a fan of the drag races, and like to kind of walk around and see it.
I mean, who isn't?
Yeah.
If he truly is the missing link, There's got to be something human going on in there. And one of those human aspects that's truly universal is fast as fuck, dope as shit,
Mm-hmm.
fucking hot rods.
Yeah.
Going fast as fuck.
Now, when you look up the Speedway Monster, there's a person who was a short order cook who lived in the Fontana area around this time, who says that over the years, friends of his have shared many stories about the supposed Speedway Monster. He couldn't elaborate, but said some old timers told him that back in 1951 and 52, a crowd of fans at the Fontana Speedway saw at a distance what seemed to be a hairy two-legged giant crisscross an open field. The crisscrossing creature appeared in the same area quite a few times in the early 1950s, the 60s, 70s, and even 80s. Despite all of the sightings of this creature during these decades, no one actually got close enough to really identify it. And so the Speedway Monster was kind of crossing those decades. There were then more sightings of another Bigfoot-like creature in the early 90s. So really just like in this area, there are Bigfoot type sightings that span from the 1760s up through like the late 90s.
A rich history.
Yeah.
Have we done a Bigfoot related cryptid in Indiana? Because I feel like we would have shit like that.
Oh fuck, what was the name of the park?
Oh,
in Columbus.
Millrace?
Millrace, yeah, the Millrace Monster. Remember the green boy?
That's right. Okay. Isn't the Millrace the Millrace Monster's like green though, right? Like,
yeah.
So I'm thinking though,
but that's because Millrace the river, the White River that runs through there, makes it kind of swampy and he's wet.
No, for sure. I'm curious though, like what the Bigfoot history of Indiana. Maybe we should take a look at it.
I did look into that one time when I was doing an Indiana cryptids episode. I didn't get into a lot of Bigfoot because it seemed like there's enough stuff, but like Indiana has a pretty. It's just going to be a lot of like sightings that are kind of like what we're talking about here.
Sure.
There's actually like a Bigfoot investigative group centered in Indiana, if I remember correctly, that I ended up looking at for some of the stuff about the Millrace Monster because I think they had some reported sightings of it. But yeah, that's totally we could totally do an Indiana Bigfoot episode for sure.
I was gonna say we're like just knowing my home state. We've got to be rife with Bigfoot believers and experiencers. That's really
I've seen Bigfoot bumper stickers around the area, and I live in like
a city.
In suburbs.
There is a car at my new job with a Bigfoot bumper sticker on it.
Yeah,
so
it's good shit.
Bigfoot's got shooters everywhere.
Yep. So basically that's most of the rest of it. Like there are other scattered reports of various Bigfoot-like creatures through the rest of like I didn't find a lot of stuff post 2000, but that's mainly because like I think a lot of the places that write up these kind of creatures and stuff mainly look to the past for these accounts because a lot of times like there's this whole thing that I've kind of noticed in researching this stuff that like once you are able to like submit reports to a database, a lot of the actual like write-ups of them become less concentrated, like it's more just like there's a database you can look up. There are like databases of Bigfoot sightings that are like you can just submit to. You can anytime you submit it, you just have to fill in all the information that you have, and so you can look at like UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings, all this stuff in recent times and find a lot of them, but it's mainly just I saw this thing in the sky or I saw this thing in the woods on this date in this area. This is what it looked like when it was, and that's it. Whereas like these older stories, because they've been told and retold and investigated and reinvestigated, you get more of a story to it. You get more of a yarn spun. And so I find that like, unless it's particularly notable, it's harder to find really good stories from recent years because they're much more bare bones, dry reporting of a thing as opposed to someone telling a story that's kind of maybe been embellished over time, maybe been kind of made more interesting,
Well, now our comments online are in the style of like YouTube comments and tweets where like we just fire off whatever. And I feel like before the internet was like a big mainstream place to like, talk about whatever.
Mhm.
I'm really articulating this amazingly well. But what I'm saying is like before that, you kind of maybe if you wanted somebody to take note of your story of your encounter with Bigfoot, you had to have some sort of embellishment that grabbed attention because how else are you going to get somebody to like report on it in the local newspaper or whatever,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, now you can just fucking take a big fucking dump online about all the Bigfoot encounters you had, and you don't have
Yeah.
to give any details, and you can just post it all over the place.
Well, and also you get a lot more groups doing investigations, so you get. I feel like there's less. I don't know, Bigfoot gonzo journalism,
Sure,
where you're
yeah.
really like spinning a story out of it, and more just like we got to keep records of everything so we can look at the statistics of how many sightings are in different areas and try to like so like some of the like fancifulness, some of the I don't know,
The like mystique.
yeah,
Yeah.
has kind of gone away to a lot of the reportings of it because it's gotten so clinical and numbers based.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying here is like, feel free to add some like spice to your Bigfoot stories, people. I'd love for the good old fashioned like big whopper of a of a Bigfoot
Yeah.
story to come back.
I saw a man who took a dip in some concrete, like
Yeah.
run around. I had my gun ripped in half by Bigfoot. Like stuff like that is way
Yeah.
more fun. And I get it, hey, and if people believe that they've seen Bigfoot, I imagine a lot of those encounters are like, as far as my experience goes with people who believe in Bigfoot, and it's a very minimal experience. Experience isn't really a good judgment to go by, but anyways, I'm going to say it anyways.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's always just like I saw like a brief flash of a thing in the woods or something threw rocks at me, or I heard like a noise, and it doesn't get too much more detailed than that. And like, for some people that's plenty.
Yeah, that's kind of the EVP of the Bigfoot world.
Sure.
I look a lot at like the difference between ghost hunting, Bigfoot hunting, and UFO hunting, and how they all have these kind of same quest for knowledge and quest for validation in them. I don't know. There's just I feel like there's a lot of ties between those things.
Yeah. For sure. And I actually, for this show, I'll end up like when the last time I remember it happening was the HMS Queen Mary haunting, where I watched multiple different there is an entire genre of YouTube where it is like you take the Zach Baggins Ghost Adventures type shit and you just do it on YouTube and you make $1 million.
Yeah.
And well, all I was gonna say is that I think that's maybe not as much of an appeal for something like Bigfoot, where it's much harder to sort of like, if your idea is to like, have some sort of like plausibly believable like experience captured on camera, that's much harder to do with like an 8-foot tall hairy man than it is like, oh, I think I heard noises or like something moved or like, that's easier to fake too if that's what you're gonna do, and I bet you some people are doing that. So yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Shouts out. I was looking for YouTube videos about the Yucca Man. And one of the ones that I saw was a guy, he only did like 3 of these, but I forget what your YouTube name is. I'll try to look it up because I want you to keep doing this because it's fucking wonderful.
Okay.
So what he did was he would take footage of him like doing like grinding on Apex Legends and just tell like stories of like one was like the Yucca Man, one was like a witch coven in an area, one like this is the thing that if we ever I kind of want to do like a Twitch version of this.
Sure.
Where it's just like us like playing fucking Fortnite while we're just like riffing about like Bigfoot stories and stuff. I think there's a market for this that I would find so wonderful to like engage in. I think would be so much fucking fun.
No, we if some people maybe don't know listening to this because I haven't really promoted it and life's been busy, but we do have a Twitch stream.
Yeah.
That for a while there I was playing with games with a friend of the show, Colin. We had a couple like streams where it was me, Nile, Jules, I think was in there. Some of them.
Yeah, we did
other
some
games,
Jackboxy stuff on there before.
which those are fun. But I agree. I think it would be fun to go on there and have like a mindless game, and then we can just like load up like, oh, maybe we've talked about this particular cryptid before, and we like review our notes, and then we just like chat about it while playing a game. I would love to do that.
There was something that just scratches this itch in my brain watching this video that I was like, this is brilliant.
It's great. Yeah, that's
thought it was
an amazing. Your description sold me already. Like, I don't even care about Apex
man.
Legends.
I don't
but
either.
I understand what you're describing and the appeal of that. So that's really great. Let's hit that before that gets real big, and then
yeah,
we'll just get a bunch of people to come chat with us about Bigfoot or whatever. That'd be great.
Oh man. So yeah, this was kind of that's the end of kind of a rough history of the Mojave Bigfoot, the Yucca Man, the cement monster. Some people called Yucca Man Old Blue Eyes for some reason. I don't really know why. It seems like one of the accounts it says that he had piercing blue eyes. Maybe, I don't know.
It's the sexy allure of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
All.
So it's time for a big question, Kyle.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this maybe in honor of the new, there's like a Nickelodeon type Smash Brothers coming out. So I was thinking, what if we were to will a cryptid based fighting game into existence?
God.
Who would be your main? And like what do you think spiritually fits you as like your cryptid fighting game main?
So here's the thing. You're kind of touching on a thing that's deeply personal for me because of how many hours I've put into fucking Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Every single game in the franchise. It's pathetic. I do love those games. I am such a sucker for it. And so if that was a thing that we did with cryptids, holy fuck, would I be there in an instant? And you're making me think about my play style.
Yeah.
So in this latest iteration of Smash Bros. I played Donkey Kong. I really love to play Donkey Kong. He's kind of like a big brawler guy. I like to play Bowser. He's kind of like a big brawlery guy. I like to play Ganondorf. Now he's kind of like a big brawlery sort of guy. So honestly, if I'm thinking about it, just with where my mentality is at with Smash Bros. Right now, and they were to come out with the cryptid equivalent, it probably would be Bigfoot or some variant. So like maybe I'll play Bigfoot, but I'll use the alternate skin that makes him the skunk ape.
Yeah, you kind of can have like the elemental versions of it. Like have your Bigfoot, your Sasquatch, your Yeti, your swamp ape. And so these are all like
awesome
elemental variants that kind of alter the play style a little bit.
Killing me that this isn't a real thing now that I'm just like thinking of it. And think of all the cool fucking maps. You could just like use real life locations. Like, I'm fighting the Fresno night crawlers at Area 51 as Bigfoot. The sickest shit I've ever heard.
Imagine like you do like the crossover of like the animal preservation next to like the chemical waste dump where Mothman was birthed.
Oh my god, yes.
You just
Point
like have
Pleasant is a map.
There's literally like there are these like silo kind of weird like concrete round structures in Point Pleasant near where Mothman was originally supposedly from that you could totally turn into like a destructible like map element. That'd be really dope.
Dude, if there are any game developers listening to us, like maybe the people behind Skullgirls are listening.
Oh
to
man.
Us. I want to talk with you about how we could enter into a relationship where we are kind of like the lore builders for your game, help you with the creature designs, because we are biblically intimate with these creatures at this point. Let's make this fucking game.
Let us be the voiceover for the like Pokemon Stadium-esque announcer,
please,
for this game. I would do that in a heartbeat. But okay,
I want this game to be real. That's really all I want here.
I also thought about what I played.
Sure.
So I was always a sword person in Super Smash Bros. I liked the which if you boil that down, it's basically having a kind of directional like one move set thing that defines the character. So you're not using a bunch of different stuff like Villager. You're not using like a whole bunch of different types of attacks. It's mainly a like single element boiled down to be the core aspect of the character. And for that, I do think you already said it, but I think my main would be the Fresno Nightcrawlers.
Okay.
Because I think like having a very kick-based singular kind of attack type is much like kind of a sword character would be in like Smash Bros.
To do a throw as the Fresno Nightcrawler, they basically do a swinging DDT.
Yeah, it would basically or like a Hurricane Rana.
Yeah.
Like it would be you would just be like all kick based, and that would be kind of a unto a sword like character in Smash Brothers. In my mind, that's how that works.
Oh my god!
So I'm saying that my main would be the Fresno Nightcrawlers.
I'm gonna be thinking about this non-existent game for the rest of the fucking night. This is such a great idea for a game, and it's such a cool fucking idea.
Come on, like there are so many fucking hentai waifu games on Steam. Just stop making those for like a minute and just make for the people. This game would not break blockbuster records.
You don't know that.
But it would have a very concentrated fan base that would love the fuck out of it if done correctly.
Absolutely.
And it would have a very core devoted fan base of weirdos like us that would love a fucking cryptid brawler fighting party game kind of thing.
I mean, just think about the roster that you have. Look at how many episodes we have done in this fucking show.
Yeah. All I'm going to say.
You think the Smash Bros. Ultimate roster is big? Sorry, but what were you going to say?
Cryptids are public domain, baby.
That's also true. Nobody has ownership over cryptids. And frankly, maybe if we put this game out, some of the cryptids that are imbued with like consciousness, which some might be, we don't know, might step out and be like, look, we saw they made this dope ass game about us.
They're going to take us to court.
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, okay, maybe they're litigious. I don't know. But maybe they come out and they're like, we had to come out because, like, look at how cool this game is. Like, we finally feel seen.
Yeah. I think that's very true. I'm going to save the question of what is the most litigious cryptid for another episode, because that's a good big question, hot topic. So, yeah, I think that'll wrap us up for today. Thank you for joining me on this history of the Mojave Bigfoot, and now both of us being very upset that a cryptid fighting game doesn't exist. As far as I know, maybe it does. Maybe there's an indie game out there already. If no one knows of one, hit us up,
please.
So on that note, let's go and take care of some business.
Sure.
If you want to follow more of the podcast stuff, you can follow us on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers, from Stitcher to Google Play to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. If you've listened to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird and we're probably there.
Email us, itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Tell us who your cryptid Smash Brothers character main would be. Go ahead and let us know. Send us the photo of Bigfoot that I was talking about earlier, too, if you've seen that. If you know what I'm talking about, please send it our way.
Yeah.
I would love to see it again. I don't have that saved in my hard drive, and I'm always looking to expand my hard drive collection of cryptids and aliens and things like that. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. Look, we'll never advertise to you. That's not what we're about. We think that shit sucks. I mean, no shade to other podcasts that do that, but some shade, I guess, because... I mean, look, we're never going to do that to you because we're cool.
Because we don't
we
try to make money off of this podcast.
We hate money. And so if you want to support us, patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $2 tier and a $5 tier. At the $2 tier, every other week you're going to get a bonus episode. And then at the $5 tier, you're getting a bonus episode every single week. You get whichever tier you donate to, you get our main episodes 2 days early, so Friday instead of Sunday. And you get access to our Discord where we have all kinds of discussions about, like, for instance, Cryptid Super Smash Bros. We also have a $1 tier, which is just, kick us a buck, say you like us, but you don't get anything out of it. It's just the satisfaction of supporting your favorite show. If you can donate to us, that would be awesome. You really should. If you don't donate to us, we'll die. So, and that's kind of on you if you don't. So, yeah, if you can't donate though, we totally understand. We get it. But please tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman about It Gets Weird podcast. Tell them it's the best show you've ever heard about Super Smash Bros. I'm not letting it go. Super Smash Bros. Cryptids. So yeah, please let people know. Most people know, a lot of people know about us because people were like telling their friends, and we appreciate
You've
that.
Lost the plot so hard to
tired.
This. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman, tell your game developer buddies. All about It Gets Weird. Spread the show because we don't like to advertise. So Thank you all for listening. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle signing out.
Peace.